Well, here we are. Merry Christmas, fellas. You guys for showing up. I see Charles is in the chat room already. The great Latora Khan is on the job. We got Biscotti here, and we've got great holiday season to wrap up. Looking forward to a wonderful 2023 with you guys, and we'll start with a couple of logistic things. As I look at the poll over there on the community tab, I asked people what should I do for the next project. We got a couple of options, and so we have some additions to that, but unfortunately those additions came in Santa's pack, so they weren't listed on the poll. I had the Ratman Army from Splintered Light is ready to go. I've got a bunch of Vendean farmers for some Rebels and Patriots, and then I have some terrain. I haven't done any terrain in a while, so I was going to put together some elven villages, or an elven village, if you will, some elven buildings, and nothing too spectacular. And then as a lark, I put down monetize the channel. And like 20 of you goofs actually told me that the first to do is monetize the channel. So first of all, thank you for the support. I really appreciate those of you that are interested in that, but I'm not there yet. 3,000 subscribers is really good. As I go live, we are 4 short of 3,000, and I'm a little bit astonished. I didn't think I'd actually crack 3,000 by the end of the year. We still have 5 days left. Looks like that's going to happen. So thanks everyone for coming aboard. I really appreciate the support that you've all shown the channel. Just a little bit of, hitting the subscribe button, saying I'm interested in seeing this in my feed. That means a lot to me. And that's enough for now. And also, when the money starts rolling in, there's a little more pressure. And I guarantee you guys are war gamers. You know how this works. If there's nothing going on and you kind of dabble a little bit, then the stars will align and you'll find time. But as soon as you have something you're really interested in, as soon as you make a solid commitment, that's when the car breaks down and the dog gets sick and the wife, decides that she needs you to redo the living room. That's when people go, oh, you've got time to enjoy yourself. Well, let me capitalize on that by taking advantage, and you can use your time for me. As soon as I monetize this channel, my time will evaporate. So, that may come down the line at some point, when we get a little bigger, when we have a real audience. But for now, I don't see you guys so much as an audience as I do a family. And, we're having a good time. Let's just, let's not put a label on it. Let's just see where things are going. So as we go live, it's going to be the Elven Village. And we'll start with that. And it's no big surprise. I shouldn't say it's no big hey, wow, I've never seen that before. I got this from somebody else. From who? I don't know, because people do this all the time. Here in the United States, this is called, we have an orange juice brand called Tropicana, and it comes with these wonderful little lids that look a little something like this. And this comes off the big, used to be 64 ounces, but thanks to Joe Biden, now it comes in 59 ounces. And then again, there's another signature brand, which is the same kind of thing, a little different. So we got 2 different size houses here, and you can stack them in a couple of different ways. If we up a little bit, we can make a little 2-story house. And then just to show you how well these work, if you've got a 15 millimeter figure, which I happen to have here, I've got a Panthro. This comes to us by way of a nice little shout out to friend of the channel, Attention Span Labs. He 3D printed this guy for you. I don't know if it's going to focus. Using the webcam, so what are you going to do? But anyway, that's a 15 millimeter figure. And if you compare that to the size of the building is a little bit undersized. We'll get it level there for you. Let's put them in front so you can see. So as you can see, the building is a little undersized, which means it's the perfect size for miniature wargaming. With all of our buildings in miniature wargaming, we build them just a little bit too small because ground scale, of course, is not the same as figure scale. We know that going all the way back to Charles Grant, Don Featherstone, the other heavy hitters of the industry. I also have, look what he sent me. He just sent me this as a lark, and we'll see a little bit more out of Attention Span Labs. He's one of those 3D print guys. We got ourselves a lovely, and I know the quality isn't great there, but I think you can even with the blurriness there, I think you can recognize who these wonderful fellows are. We got ourselves a He-Man and a Battle Cat. So a little bit of, Saturday, not after school cartoons for you there. And then one last little batch that I just recently finished painting these up. I don't know if you can tell what this is. He looks like a blue trooper. He is absolutely a Cobra Commando. So we got plenty of those guys, and now I got to find the rest. So let's take a look. I'm going to show you what else you can expect to see on the channel coming up. I have an order for some 2mm modern day armies, kind of modern day. They're actually, I ordered the Spanish Civil War pack. So I've got the Republicans and I've got the good guys. I've got the Carlists. I don't know what's in the packs. They're regular miniatures. I know there's 100 figures, and then we'll base them similar to the way we've done the other 2mm figures. So we can start kind of easing into those interwar years. Now, for those, I'm not going to do a pure historical because they're 2mm. What I really want to do is paint up 2 matched armies. And, again, at 2mm, you can use them for fairly broad scale. I have Santa brought me this World of Flame, the Osprey Blue Book, wonderful artwork. The game itself is 15mm, and I want to read you just a little bit of the design notes from this because it's nice. I'm looking forward to playing with this. It's a little off the beaten path. I guess you would say. Originally designed with the imaginary British Civil War of the late 1930s in mind. This is by Paul Eaglestone, by the way. The rules are written in what is nowadays often called a retro style and pay homage to rule sets written by such wargaming legends as Charles Grant and Don Featherstone. Why? Well, to me, the style and mechanisms found in the rules by these gentlemen in the late 60s seem to suit the interwar period. Maybe it's nostalgia, and that's definitely true. These are written for 28mm figures, and you need a fairly substantial collection. We're looking at about 60 to 70 per side. They're organized into squads and the organization is a little odd. If you want to get these, we'll do a full video on these, but just to kind of show you what I'm going to have to wrangle here to try to jam these into 2mm, you have infantry squads of about 10 guys. And again, the force listings depend a little bit upon exactly and I should say it's got the Spanish Civil War on the cover, but it is definitely for the interwar period because a lot of the artwork in here is written for the author's own fictional British Civil War of the 1930s. But a lot of this is, like look at this guy. They're not telling us who he's from, and I don't recognize the uniform, but he looks, this is probably the Japanese Chinese War, or maybe even the Russo-Japanese War of the late 1930s. You've got a behemoth of a rail tank. Look at that in the back there. Look at that lovely little rail tank. How would you like to see that on your table? I'd love it. It also has, it's got a little bit of like late colonial era stuff going on there. Italians versus, who did the Italians snipe in the 30s? One of the African nations. Was it Ethiopia? I think it might have been Ethiopia. But yeah, see again here. Look at this fellow there. That ain't no Spaniard right there. I tell you that right now, brother. So this is kind of for that adventurous time between World War II and World War I. But it is written from, again, you could use it for those conflicts. The point I was getting at is you've got 3 basic elements when you compile your force roster. The first is infantry sections and squads, which could be 10 men to the squad and 3 squads plus maybe a support weapon. And if you've got 3 or 4 of those units, that's a company. And if you get 3 or 4 companies, then you're dealing with a battalion. And if you got 3 or 4 battalions, then you're dealing with a brigade and army. Well, we're not going to get there. So the question is, do I go ahead and just treat each of my squads? Do you scale up? And we've done this before, where if you've got a base of figures, that base might represent a squad. It might represent a platoon. Or maybe you put 3 squads down as a maneuver element, and you jam them together, kind of like a rank and flank game. But now you've got your three squads as a platoon, and that's your maneuver element. So we may do it that way, and we may just use like wound counters to track how many guys are hit. The problem is it's a little bit hinky because you also need to worry about such things. The communications in this, you might think they're a little bit backwards until you think about it. Oh, you guys can hear me, yeah? Abyssinians, thank you, James L. We're going to check the chat here real quick just to kind of confirm before I get like 20 minutes into this. Cozy Christmas, thank you, ANN. Sapper Joe in the house. Sapper, I have a figure for Sapper Joe. My French sapper I named after him. Those guys are from the Russian Civil War. Sapper Joe says those guys are from the Russian Civil War, 1917 to 23. So I've showed a couple of different guys now. I'm assuming that he was showing us these guys. Oh, yeah. See, this guy has a little bit of the Asiatic, but now that I look at it, yeah. Yeah, a couple of those guys. Sometimes, I think Russian. I tend to think of the Western Russians and not so much the Eastern. Yeah, you can't tell me this guy. Check out this guy. Are you telling me he's from the Russian Civil War though? I got a bunch of neighbors who look like him. He looks more like some kind of adventurous stuff down in Malaysia, to be honest with you. But he does have the communist style hat. Maybe he's Spanish. I don't know. And being Osprey, of course, it doesn't have all the ones that are like really interesting, and I really want to know what they are. There's no labels. Come on, Osprey. Come on now. But there are labels on a lot of these, like this Italian infantry. They've got some odd, I'm not familiar with these helmets. I don't know if it's showing up on the camera very well or not. They have almost like a foot dragoon crest to them, like that old timey fireman hat, but it's very low slung, which is kind of nice. I wouldn't have recognized those as Italians if they didn't tell me that. So anyway, the problem is, as I was saying, so you've got your 3 squads, and then that's a maneuver element. You maybe have 3 of those so that you have your whole three squads to the company. We're cramming it down. It's impressionistic hobby. But then you also have individual figures for runners, because the command and control on this game is fascinating, because the squad leader can tell his guys, go run over there 15 inches away, and they're still in command. But the company commander, who's way behind the enemy lines, his command radius is only, and this is because he's giving direct commands now, instead of 15 inches, it's like 6 inches. Well, why would the company commander have a smaller command range than the squad commander? And Paul spells it out for you in black and white. He says, well, that's because the company commander is not dealing with screaming at some, scared kid to get out of that trench and charge forward. He's dealing with commands given to each of those individual guys. He's only going to shout those commands 5 or 6 inches. The way he's going to exercise his command and control is through runners. So you do have specific individual figures for runners and medics, and you can even have like resupply in this game, which is interesting. So the couple of things seem a little backwards, but now you've got to deal with if your squads have their orders, or your companies have their orders. And if your company is ordered to take that hill, and you realize that it would be better for them to take that bridge instead, you have to send a runner over there, and that's going to take a game turn or 2. So some really interesting ways to deal with command and control that go beyond just, well, it's a -1 on the die roll. Kind of looking forward to putting this to use, but it's going to be a little bit of a, trying to jam that like 10 pounds of game into 5 pounds of 2mm figures might be a little bit of a trick, but we'll get there. Zapper Joe says, the one with the trainer from the Russian Civil War, the guy sitting alone was a Spanish Civil War. That guy, that's what I thought. He's got kind of that med appearance. But I mean, you can tell these are not all purely West. So there's like a lot of guys that are sick of dealing with Western conflicts, and they want to spend more time dealing with more, and not just like samurai, but more like modern 1930s, the Eastern conflicts that don't necessarily have a bunch of colonial Euros in there mucking up the locals. So so this rule set, for those of you that are in that camp, this rule set, I would recommend it. It's a good, solid kind of pre-World War II. And I think it's a fun period to war game. Now, part of that might be because I recently read Peter Kemp's Mine War of Trouble. And that's for those of you that don't know, Peter Kemp fought on the side of he fought for Franco basically in the Spanish Civil War. And he wrote a memoir about his experiences. And he's a total badass. I highly recommend you read it, because it will cut against the grain of most of the modern understanding of that conflict. And it will really give you some insight to why anyone would be interested in fighting against communists, which sounds strange to me. But if all you do is consume what the man in the magic box says, it's a useful purgative. And it's a good read. The guy reads great. It's a lot like if you read and enjoyed Storm of Steel, and regardless of where, good guy, bad guy, whatever, Storm of Steel is a great read. I highly recommend Peter Kemp's. It takes place about 5 years before Storm of Steel, but it's the same kind of thing, where this heroic guy keeps running into the face of danger. And at one point he gets his jaw shot off, and everybody's standing around going, well, looks like this one's a goner. And then he stands up and says, which is, of course, if you have your jaw shot off, that's how you say, screw you, buddy, I'm going for a hike. And he got up and literally walked back to the aid station, laid down, and the guys at the aid station are doing triage. And they're like, yeah, this one's a goner. So he sits up and he basically gives him this, he's got no jaw, but he basically gives the doc this kind of look. And the doc goes, oh, you know what? Maybe we should put that one over there with the likely to live ones. Just like pure force of will. I am going to get through this. Great read. Peter Kemp, Minor of Trouble. Highly recommend it. Look for Mystery Grove Publishing. They have a really good version of that. Element with dice frames. Red 7mm dice for hit points. Yeah, that's so James L. has a recommendation. Grab the small red dice for up to 6 hit points. And then you switch over to yellow for when you do hit points from 7 to 12, and then green 4 to 18. So I would do green for the first 6 hits, yellow for the next, and red for the final. So you can actually have, it's almost like a little status bar sitting by the figure. Not a bad idea, James. I'll have to remember that. Justin Thorpe, what are you doing around these? We got some chats going here. I'll skip those. The interwar period is great, says the Cornish Crusade. All the elan of World War I without the horror, all the technology of World War II without the mass manufacturing of total war. Cornish Crusade, couldn't agree more, except I would add this. And I think I was listening to an interview with, I want to say it was the Yorkshire Gamer, maybe. The guy pointed out the other great thing about the interwar years and early World War II is that you have a lot of technology that we don't really know how it works. And a lot of technology that the eggheads back in the lab thought would be fantastic, and it doesn't really work that well. So you get all of these like wonky little things like is it the Matilda tanks that are like, they've got like a camera case with a little pea shooter on top. And they're crazy fast and crazy armored, but it's just a little pea shooter. And, the Tigers haven't shown up to dominate. Even the Panzers aren't really there yet. You've got these funky little, they almost look like something out of Car Wars, right? Those little 2-man tankettes. A lot of fun little stuff that is wildly unpredictable, or really you need to focus in and use it the right way at the right time if you're going to get use out of it. So I kind of, and it's kind of the difference, to use an analogy, and you know me, I like analogies like a fat kid loves cake. It's the difference between watching the National Football League. When you watch the NFL, most of those guys, I'm a Detroit Lions fan, so not all of these guys are operating at a high level, but most of these guys are operating at that 99.9 percentile. That they rarely make mistakes. It's all a question, it's just the razor thin differences. There's a difference between victory and defeat, and it all becomes rather predictable. I know the ball doesn't bounce straight, but when you're talking about the NFL play, these guys don't make mistakes. It does get pretty predictable. There's a reason that the big when you look at the gambling spreads in the NFL, they're typically 10 points is a blowout. You don't see a whole lot of 13. You don't see any 20-point spreads because these guys don't make mistakes. In college football, these are a bunch of 18-year-old kids, right? They run left when they're supposed to run right. They forget that Baker Bruce 2 is a stunt to the right and not a stunt to the left. They get a little cocky. They start, getting flamboyant. They drop the ball at the most inopportune times. It is wildly unpredictable, and I love that. And so, not to say that the guys that were fighting in the Spanish Civil War were amateurs, but this is definitely a case where, and we all know that both sides, the Germans and the Russians and everybody, decided to use it as a live fire testing for their new technology. Hey guys, why don't you try this out for 3 or 4 months? Tell me how it works. All right, thanks. We're going to take it back now, right? So you get that kind of thing too, where maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Now, before we move on from Spanish Civil War, I will also say this. I bought 2 battle packs from Irregular Miniatures. I also bought their rule set, which is called ¿Qué? Which my Spanish is a little rusty, but if I recall correctly, that's the Spanish word for what? Correct me if I'm wrong, chat. I really appreciate it. So we got a couple of different Spanish Civil War rules, and as I was getting into earlier, I'm going to paint them up in probably a red army, blue army, but because it's modern, I'll probably go with a tan and a green, classic army man fashion. So although the battle packs that I got do come with things like the, what are the period specific tanks? Is the PCT-3? I've only just started researching this. We don't need planes. Planes are going to be strafing. They're off field effect. But here we go. They do some Russian Civil War, and they actually give you this is a terrible camera for this. Warlord China. That's what I was looking for. See that stat lists for Warlord China backwards, because that's how we roll. And then the one battle they give you is the battle for Jarama Hill, which was part of the push to take Madrid, I believe. Franco's nationalist forces tried to dislodge Republicans from their positions along the Jarama River. Suicide Hill. Ooh, that's a good one. Suicide Hill. Who wouldn't want to war game that? Just from the name alone, I'm excited. And then it does use chance cards. It uses all the good Featherstone, fun and games. But what's the small biplane? I'm looking for the vehicles so I can tell you straight up. Yeah, T-26s. You're not going to see any Panzers in this one. UK is going to be sending little Lloyd tankettes. I know the Italians, the little CV-33s. The Italians sent a whole bunch of those CV-35s to the forces of Franco. Anyway, so moving on. So we'll do like a green and tan. And that way, okay, so we got T-26. If we want to do some more modern stuff, if we want to break out, something weird like Fistful of Toes, all we got to do is get some modern tanks, right? Get some T-72s, get some, whatever. We could do, I don't know what the German tanks are. I'm drawing a blank. Abrams, get a couple of Abrams, and now look, you've got a modern day force. That's the beauty of the system. Sapper Joe confirms K means what? Cornish Crusade, couldn't agree more. The ridiculous vehicles are great for Spanish Civil War and the fictional, very British Civil War, and maybe even some, White Russians. I need do some White Russians and Red Russians. We could do some. There's not a lot, as much as we hear about the Spanish Civil War. I don't know that I've heard a whole lot about the Russian Civil War, and there were some fairly substantial stand-up battles in the Russian Civil War. I've seen a couple of war games on that issue, but I think it's underserved. And hey, if nobody else is going to do it, why not me, right? Who else are we looking at? Authoritative News Network. Showboating on the front lines can only end in one of two extremes. Yeah, that's very true, right? You go big or you go home in a pine box. And oftentimes both. Justin Thor LPs. I guess that's been, which were mobile pillboxes, a little less convenient than a coffin, I would say. Yeah, indeed. Can you recommend an Osprey or other rule set for Tumans or Normans? I'm being informed, which is relatable. Please wait while we try recovering. My connection is unstable, which is relatable. Hopefully we're recovered now. If you guys are hearing the weird robot voice, just go ahead and let me know. I don't know why my slow mode is on for the chat, and I don't know how to turn it off. Or I would. Toggle timestamps. I tell you, man, I'm using the YouTube interface here, and it is, man, it's not friendly. Everything is hidden where you'd least expect it. So I apologize for those of you. I mean, there's only 10 of us. What do we need slow mode for? Also under the tree, little game called A Billion Suns. So I needed some of you guys. Once again, we will digress. I asked you guys last week, hey, what have I not done that you want to see on the table? And I got a lot of really good suggestions. I do have a Chosen Men battle already filmed that is slated to go live the week of January. A lot of you guys had suggestions for things that have kind of been on my kind of teetering on the kind of wavering. The big one will be, I'm already ready. I got everything I need to go for Rangers of Shadow Deep. So you can expect one of those things. And because I've recently been reading Black Company, I may go ahead and just do a Black Company theme Rangers of Shadow Deep. It'll be Rangers of Ghost Country. Lady understands that my Shadow Deep will be Ghost Country, and the lady is dispatching Croaker and One Eye and Otto and who else? Mergen, the standard bearer, will take a plunge in there. Hasn't come yet, but it'll be coming. So expect to see some space combat-y stuff, and then this will make some my buddies over there in the happy. Where's my third one here? There we go. I went ahead and picked this up. This game looks like a lot of fun. Castles in the Sky. We've recently been doing more naval wargaming on the channel. I got a couple of those going live later this week. And Castles in the Sky is, you guys know what this is. It's the kind of Victorian flying battles. It's battleships in 3D. And I've never done, the reason I got this game, from everything I've read, everything I've heard online, this game handles 3D in a really unusual and interesting way. The good news is, when you're talking about fighter combat with A Billion Suns, with this, you can squash that three-dimensional space down into 2 dimensions without really losing any fidelity. It's a simplifying assumption, but the battle of positioning, I've played a couple of 3D games of space combat. And that third dimension doesn't really add anything. However, I've also played a couple of World War I aerial combats. And in that case, you're not really dealing, that 3 dimensions is a layer cake, where the simplifying assumption is that you have elevation bands. And now, because you've got a definitive up and a definitive down, whether you're up or down makes a big difference. In something like this, it really doesn't. There is no up, there is no down. It doesn't matter. What do you care whether it's 3D or 2D? You can condense that third dimension down to 2, and the battle of the positioning game stays the same. But with this, you really can't do that with aircraft, because with aircraft, and even if they're boat aircraft, if you're up high and you're swooping down, if you're down, or particularly with a game like this, where I notice that most of the guns are on the top of the ship, right? So I'm guessing you kind of want to be low so you can shoot at the guy and he can't shoot. But now, of course, you can depress the guns, of course. But with something like this, with a layer cake game, that's going to be interesting. So I need to get some of these ships, and I still have to write a couple of my buddies over there. I tend to think of them as the Wiley Games crew. They were the ones that successfully peer pressured me into playing Naval War games in the first place, for which I appreciate, because I've had a lot of fun with that. And I do have, here, give me 1 second to come over here and grab this. This has been on my to-do list. There we go. This has been on my to-do list for a while as well. Heart of Oak. This is an old school. Well, I don't know how to reverse that. Heart of Oak by Fantasy Games Unlimited. John Williams wrote this, and John spells his name correctly, so bonus points for that. Look at this. Look at this for old school fun. Look at all these charts. Look at this. That's like the movement charts. That's bonkers. I also have Blood, Bilge, and Iron Balls. That's a recommendation. So force roster like that. Oh man, look. This is where is it? Here's your look at this. Is just this whole page is wind charts. How crazy is that? From the world of privateers and gentlemen. And here goes our rooster. Weather change. This is still weather. We got 2 full pages of weather charts. It's really crazy. And then it has a fun little campaign system where everything is measured in millimeters. It gives you these little, islands somewhere in the Caribbean, and it tells you can see. So that's 100 kilometers, and the campaign rules tell you how far you can see. If you have a ship here, you can see like, I don't know, it's like 22 millimeters, depending on which ship it is. A small ship, because the mast is smaller, you can only see so far over the horizon. A big ship is going to be able to see a lot further. So it looks crazy detailed. We're probably going to do a little bit of frigate duels with that to start with, but it comes highly recommended by somebody who's way more about this than me. So looking forward to that. And that's the books that you can expect. Glenn Cook, I heard about that. And so many from the Hordes of the Things reading list. Highly recommend Glenn Cook, his Black Company series. They call it, I've heard it called Fantasy Vietnam. I don't really buy that, but it's interesting. It's a mercenary company, and the combat doesn't take up a whole lot of the book, actually. It's a memoir from a guy serving. Imagine if George R.R. Martin was, and now you have an idea of what it might be. Tons of fun. The YouTube interface might be garbage, but your channel, they'll give you a really nice credit card that weighs about a pound. Yeah, I hope so. Godby and Sons and some spaceships. Just need to clear a table. Charles, looking forward to seeing that. Corners Crusade. You mean to tell us that the ship that Red Helen escaped on was a floating warship? Oh, is that what we should do? I do need to get back to Red Helen. She's still kind of hovering out there. But again, I haven't found a pirate rule set that I really like. The Osprey, not Blood and Thunder. I can't remember what it's called. It was pretty weak. And maybe I just need to throw down Red-Handed Helen in. So I've got Wiley. So I've got Fistful of Lead. Keep nagging me. Hey, I got the Black Raven this week, didn't I? Huh? Wiley doing Victorian science fiction soon. I am pumped for that. Yeah, he's got a spaceship fight game as well. I'm looking forward to that. Reminds me a little of the Minden book games. Not sure you can make a great video of a book game, but I'm loving that format lately. This is Biscotti. She is a African gray who comes to us by way of Africa. See the red tail? I could be wrong on this one, but I think the African pilots, the segregated pilots that flew out of Tuskegee, they were called the Red Tails. And be because African birds have the red tails here, but it might be because of the red-tailed hawks that were in the Tuskegee area. So I could be wrong, but I think African pilots, African bird, red tails on the planes. It makes sense to me. Headcanon, at least, if nothing else. Do you guys have any questions, any concerns, anything, any questions for the channel? I appreciate the chatters. Keep going. I did order. If I was really on my game plan, I would have had my painted ones ready to go for Xenos Rampant, and really for all the Rampant family games. I've never done Berserker Army. I've done some elites. I've done some mounted. I've done, kind of the mixed force. I've done a lot of foot, but I've never done the Berserkers. And I think these guys, this is alternative armies, and he's basically a lizardman alien type. I have a couple painted up in my box. Hey, Biscotti, keep them company for a second. I'll grab my sci-fi box and show you what they look like. Just talk amongst yourselves. This is how we roll. Okay. And this might be a good excuse just to kind of show you guys why I do 15 millimeter. You see this little tackle box here? Right? There's I don't have a ruler handy, but that's how big it is, right? It's about twice the size of your head. And I can pack so much stuff in this. I got all my vehicles in the top case. This is where my Xenogrinches and my dwarves live. And then if you open it up, it's got 4 shelf trays. And we can find, here we go. So each of these trays is roughly big enough to hold 100 to 150 figures. This will, some of you might want to look away for this one. This is going to horrify you. I game in 15 millimeter. These are my figures. Yep. I'm not too worried about it. I shellac them pretty hard, and they get a few dings. They get a few scrapes. They are well loved. They are well used. I'm not going to stress out about it. And if you're not going to stress out about it, then, you can get away with this too. So here's a look at what these guys look like. And you'll forgive me, I can't remember what they're called. They're available from alternative armies. But once you paint them up, they look a little something like that. So I'm going with just kind of a nice pale yellow with some, that allows me to throw some pinks and blues in there. All right, my camera's terrible. I do have a 25 millimeter, like boss figure in that same style. They come in two scales. Is that the same scale? I don't know. Oh, he's like a Draken or something like that. That's what we're going to do. So those guys, I specifically set out to buy the kind of a Berserker army. So, Space Force, so to speak. And that's kind of the plan. I got a big box from friend of the channel. I don't know where that box is. I probably put it up already. I got a whole bunch of terrain from Short Attention Span. No, it's not Short Attention Span. Attention Span Labs. He's the guy that sent me He-Man and Battle Cat and all of those Cobra Commandos. He said, and I don't know that I believe him. He said, hey, I was printing up some stuff for a convention game and I had some extras, so I threw them in a box. So I've got some science fiction buildings. I've got some Tatooine style and some more modern urban. He sent me a Normandy house and just a whole bunch of great looking terrain. I'm looking forward to patching that up. Elvish Village. So just all kinds of fun stuff going on. And then there's one more thing I want to show you, you lunks. I guess that was it. Those guys. You guys got any questions for the host? Equans. Thank you, Ryan Fry. Ryan Fry says those are called the Equans, and you are correct. Just picked up Xenos 2023 Beware Baldmen. I don't know. I partially associate with that remark. 6 millimeter fantasy deserves an outing again someday. You have a personal attachment to the 1 hour war game videos. Thank you, James L. The Knights and so for 1 hour war games, I have 2 armies, 2 matched armies. I have an undead army and I have a what is it? Just regular army. And we should probably throw a little bit of fantasy rules in there. It'll be really easy to do. The undead army just regains a hit point every turn, and the Knights army just I don't know, what would you do for those guys? Their break point is after they get an extra element that you need to break. It'd be easy enough. I just finished painting my Equans. Ryan Fry, thank you for that. We're on Intanius Vertum Yeah, in addition to the birds outside, the roosters going off, he gets very excited from time to time. What are the chances of doing a solo Wargaming Guide campaign using Dragon or Xenos Rampant? I've thought about that. I really enjoy those rule sets. I don't know how well a campaign in the solo Wargaming Guide style would work. I really enjoy the solo Wargaming Guide style of campaign. It's very detail oriented. It's very roster oriented. You track casualties. You track movement. I don't know how well that would work with Dragon Rampant. And we've talked about that on the channel a couple of times. I've talked about it on places like Let Adventure Forum. You can find me there posting under the name Warren A-Box. The issue with Dragon Rampant is, let's say you have we'll just go through an example real quick. If I have a unit of whatever, call it heavy foot, and I've got 12 guys, and I go through a battle, and those 12 guys take 5 casualties, and I win the fight. Okay, that's great. What do I do with that unit? Do I bring out 7 guys for the next army and say, here's my unit of 7 guys? I'm already starting at a point where, and then how do you handle morale? Because the rules are predicated upon you have a morale check, and for every casualty you take, you have a -1. But what if I start the game with 5 casualties? Does that mean that my morale checks do start at -5 or not? So there's a lot of questions that revolve around how to manage a Dragon Rampant or a Lion Rampant campaign. The other way to run a campaign with those rule sets, a map-based campaign, one where you track the degradation of armies over time, let's say, not necessarily even just casualties, but the loss of command and control, and the loss of initiative. You would do it on the basis of army points. That if you win a fight, you can replace. I guess you would do it. Then how would you interface that with the map-based organization? Because the beauty of 1-hour war games is you assemble armies and you shove them around a board until they spin to each other, and then you track the health of those armies based on. I just don't know that it works really well for Dragon Rampant. Dragon Rampant is a great game for throwing some guys on the table, rolling some dice, but it's really geared specifically towards streamlining the tabletop play, not so much the campaign. So that are very low unless I can come over some really big, and there may be an opportunity there for Osprey to put out a campaign book, something along the lines that Henry Hyde put out with his wargaming campaigns, where there's a number of different ways to run this campaign. Here's some kind of Mighty Empire style, maybe I just need to use bigger hexes, and maybe I need to stop stressing out about the degradation of the armies. Maybe we just, take a look at the army, however many army points it has at the end of the fight, give them a bonus of 10% for recovery for the next fight. You okay there, sweetheart? Are we thirsty? No? No, it's right there. No? Okay. We're fine. Just ignore her. Going back to I got the solo Wargaming Guide as a Christmas gift. Read it, to be honest. You should be Intanius Vertum. It is a great book, and it will give you, your head will start spinning. It's not the best organized book, but it's definitely full of great ideas. And there's a few, you take this section and this section and this section. It'll be different for everybody. You string them together and you can have a great time with it. I got the solo Wargaming Guide because of Mr. Oh, thank you. Absolutely brilliant read. Very kind of fun. And maybe that's the answer. Maybe I should go back to the solo Wargaming Guide and read the sections I haven't used with more of an eye towards Dragon or Xenos Rampant, maybe, because a lot of the latter half of the book is about like modern warfare, mechanized and more supply and logistics. That might be more appropriate for Xenos Rampant. So I haven't read it in a year and a half. I should probably do that. That's a good call. I agree with James L. Good call. Hey, do you know of any solo mech games? I'm not a big mech guy. I don't know of any solo. You're talking about big stompy robots, I assume. It's a genre that has never held any real appeal for me. Much to the chagrin, I could have twice as many viewers if I played the robot game. I can't even think of what the robot game is called. BattleTech. It's a BattleTech, right? It's a grand old game. I'm sure it's a lot of fun, but I don't know. When I see the big robots, and that might be because of there's a mental hurdle there that I've spend enough time hanging out with infantry, and they talk about how you don't want to be too close to a tank because they can't see you, and a robot would just be that much worse. I don't know. There's something about the like again the logistics train just doesn't make sense with all the weapons we have. Anyway, long story short, I'm just not a big mech gamer. It's a personal thing. You do you. I guess we've had enough, huh? Once I get a few Hex Encounter games completed, says Charles, I'll be doing hopefully 80 plus each side with Wargs hunting. Oh, orcs with Wargs hunting pack. Yeah, 80 is a good number of figures. And that's about what I have when I'm doing the rank and flank fights with. Where are you going, sweetheart? Even a game like Age of Fantasy Regiments. I think my big army has about 90 to 100. Like the undead, I think we had about 85 to 90 figures on the table. And that's a really big Age of, well, for my table, that's a big Age of Fantasy. You could probably get 200 guys on the table. If you're doing a 1,500 point Age of Regiments army, you'd probably get up to about 150 figures. But I'm comfortable in the 50 to 100. That's fine for me for like big war bands and rank and flank. You could roll on a table for a debut for each 50% strength unit and a debit. Sorry, I get it. Spell check is rarely your friend. You can do a debit for each 50 half strength unit and a buff for the veteran units. Yeah, kind of do, even if you're just replacing like 2 or 3. Because again, we tend to think of casualties as war gamers. We go, okay, this guy's out of the fight. Okay, this guy's killed. And we'll say, yeah, this guy's killed. Just take him off the table. But in most cases, casualties just means I'm unable to fight because I'm bleeding heavily. If I can get some Band-Aids and if I can just lay down for a day or two, then I'll be fine. Now, that's a casualty in terms of our little, tactical tabletop game. And it's a casualty. I mean, it's recorded as a casualty. It's a wounded in action. But that doesn't mean he's out of the campaign. And that may be part of the problem too, is I haven't really thought enough about, it's not that on off for a campaign using Dragon Rampant in a more, okay, this guy's out of the battle, but there's a war situation. And maybe even just that would be enough, that because honestly, in Dragon Rampant, most of the times I don't really play with a whole lot of half strength units. When units get down to half strength, unless they're elite, they aren't going to stick around for very long. Just you plink away with them a couple of arrows, just force that morale check, and they're likely to fail. Once you get up to like -7, forget about it, man. Who's going to stick around for that? The only guys that stick around at half strength are the guys that half strength means you're at -3 and they have a morale of 3. So yeah, I'm going to succeed on most of those morale checks. And with those guys, and that may be the other issue as well, is that when you get back an elite figure, that's a whole different ballgame than getting back a light infantry figure. So even if you're dealing with the same probability of getting those figures back, it really does add to the value of elite units from a strategic perspective, because you're getting back so much more oomph when you get back one of those figures. But 80 plus orcs versus 80 plus humans. Yep, that's pretty good. So yeah, BattleTech, it's just someday if I'm at a convention and I don't have anything better to do. If I did BattleTech, then the channel would probably be twice its size. But I don't know. It's there's too much American blood running through my veins to try to follow the crowd. When the herd goes this way, for those of you that are online too much, I definitely try to be more of a K persona than an R persona. Think Starship Troopers book. It's really heavy infantry. The BattleTech is just heavy infantry because they're really just doing like the Starship Troopers Space Marines, huh? Ambrose. I guess that makes sense. It was a rookie status thing in the BattleTech universe, along with their own comedic version of the Geneva Convention. James L. Thank goodness Kings of War did Ambush. It's a bit of a slog getting to that first 1,500 points. A lot of guys. Kings of War, that is Warlord, right? And again, you're on a small fish in a pretty big pond, and even the big Warlord fish might be a little too big for me. I'm definitely a niche of a niche. And hey, maybe that's why I don't really concern myself. A lot of the big channels are freaked out about the graying of the hobby. Yeah, boy, they're worried about the population decline, or is the hobby dying? And I'm just like, my hobby's fine, brother. It's a golden age for me. But I guess if your paycheck depends on it, you're going to freak out about a lot more. If you're trying to quit your day job doing this, then yeah, that's probably a bigger. And by the way, just remember when people say, is the hobby dying? We know a way you could help. The next thing out of their mouth is subscribe to my Patreon for $5 a month, and you can be a part of the solution. Yeah, I know a way you could help save the hobby. Give me money. Come on. Fistful of Lead has done Battlesuit Alpha. Yeah, they have. But also again, bear in mind, brother, I live in Hawaii, man. Eggs are $7.50 a dozen, unless you have a hutch of your own. Milk is $7.50 a gallon for us. Real estate is like $300 a square foot. My one little Walmart shelf, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shelves of stuff. I've got 5 boxes of these. I've got 3 sets of 2mm cases. I'm out of space, guys. If I can't cram it into an existing box, it's not for me. I have just enough room for the modern 2mm. The only reason I can get away with that is I already have all the terrain for 2mm figures. If I step into Battletech figures, now we're talking about what effectively amount to 28mm figures. I just don't have room for it. And frankly, there's too many really great games on this scale. Too many of these little $20 games that punch way above their weight. I'll work my way through all those, and they're making out more of them all the time. In fact, I'm still waiting on. I gotta get permission. Have you guys looked into? Where's my? Oh, here it is. I put it right here just so I wouldn't forget. Have you guys looked into this illegible? Look at this nightmare of a logo. Oh, Mike Hutchinson, what are you doing? How am I? Although, okay, to be fair, black on white. This is called Hobgoblin. But does it say that? It says Hobgoblin right there, believe it or not. I don't know. This is the beta test. And I downloaded it. It's an interesting rank and flank game. It has some really cool, neat little innovations. And this is part of what inspired the recent video on rough going and how rough going is handled. In this case, rough going, you move through it, no problem. Except once you've moved through it, you're disordered. So now I get through it, and my nice, neat little rows, my little ranks are now blown out, and I'm vulnerable until I spend a turn reforming. Okay, so you don't move at half speed. You just have to hold off a turn and reform, and you fight it at a minus. All right, 6 of one. I think it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But it's a neat way to handle rough going, and there's a lot of like really funky. It's got look at this table, right? With these guys attack these guys. Here's the hit chart, and then it's got all these fun little tags that really amount to traits in any other game. But like I said, this is version 7.0. This is a beta test. I'm waiting to hear from those guys. I will be filming one of these the first opportunity. They do have a nice, neat, full color, like whatever. I don't even know. Well, let's take a look since we're doing the plug for something we like. Electi Studios. Again, this is Mike Hutchinson, right? Mr. Gaslands, Mr. Billion Suns. Mr. Wargaming definitely has a type. Rule of Carnage, one of the best wargaming channels out there. I don't want to put this on camera while it's in beta test because I don't know if I'm ruining anything. So I'm going to wait until I get permission or until the full color game comes out, and then we'll give it a look because it's different. It's neat. There's some good ideas in there. Where the first time I read through it, it was really weird. There's a lot of concepts that he's like, hey, we got to talk about this first. Bird, what are you doing over there? All right, she's exploring. She found herself a nice little cave. So a lot of really interesting concepts that I'm excited to show you guys, and maybe drive some sales his way so that it's a little more successful. But again, it's in beta test. So I don't know if it's open if I can do that. Once I get word that I can, we'll throw it on the table. Point wise, it's an army list building game. It's rank and flank. So there's enough familiar stuff there that I'm not too intimidated. Like I'm building on a foundation that I understand. But the new concepts are novel enough and interesting enough. I have no idea how they're going to work. I don't know if they're going to be fun, but I'm excited to try. Going back to our top chat, I don't know, and maybe this is the way to monetize. Maybe just make super chats available. So somebody wants to throw $5 in the tin. Let's see, 1,500 points. Fistful of Lead has done Battlesuit Alpha. Yeah, we talked about that. 50 to 150 figures in real size, 15 or 28mm. would be limit. But if you did Games Workshop, your channel would be huge, but your kids would have no shoes. That's very true. The hobby has been dying for 80 years. That's a great point, right? The hobby has been dying for 80 years, and I don't know why we're concerned. Mantic. Oh, those are the guys. Yeah. That's the other thing is because I'm a guy that I'm not a part of the pop cult. I'm not like huge into Marvel. I'm aware of it. I can talk about it. I'm not stupid. We just watched Spider-Man. I showed my youngest the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man the other day. It's fine. It's a fun movie, but I'm not like crazy into it. Star Wars and all that. When you put Star Wars on it, I'm not impressed. Okay, it's great, but I've seen it. I've done it. And so a lot of the things like it says the guy that's got He-Man on his shelf. I know. I contain multitudes. What can I say? The point is, when these intellectual property titles drop, I don't feel like I have to get it because I got to tell people that I'm part of that club. I'm more I'm a miniature wargamer. I'm not like a comic book guy. So, this is the club I want to be a part of. I'm looking at the chat. That's the club I want to be a part of, not the Star Wars club. And it's nothing against them. Fine. You like what they've done with Star Wars? That's great. Go have a good time without me. You'll be fine. Enjoy yourself. You don't need my approval. I'm not here to validate you. Unlike there's some commenters get really mad when I don't do that, and we just don't. If you need validation, you're in the wrong house, buddy. You're gonna earn it when people do stuff like this. We have the best, and honestly, aside from a couple of goofs, we have the best chats on this channel. I'd be interested to see a Hobgoblin video. Isn't the setting a mass battle in a D&D style mega dungeon? Is that right? So the beta test doesn't have any of that stuff. He does promise. He says, "Hey, look, we have a setting for you." What do I need a setting for? I got figures. I'm fine. Where is it? I'll read it to you verbatim. I have 2 objectives. No, that's not it. I wanted a game. Where is it? This is an advanced copy. Only the rules it's containing. I'm sorry, that's rude. This is an advanced copy containing only the rules for quality assurance and playtesting. The finished product contains deep narrative setting and illustrations exploring the deep catacombs of the Rotvaralden. What is A with 2 dots over it? Rotvaralden. So there you go. Who said that? I'd sling you with Britzy. Cornish Crusade. I can confirm the setting is a giant mega dungeon called the Rotvaralden, which would be great for terrain. Not a lot of like dungeon-sized room, like tabletop-sized rooms for dungeons. I could see building a little like 2x2 frame that's just like a pure dungeon room for fighting in. If you bloat max your collection, you always end up giving away stuff or selling anyways. I just sold 200 boxes. That's the thing is, as much as I like doing this stuff, if I want to do something goofy and fun, if I want to like break out and do some 28mm painting, I'll paint them up and I'll send them to Attention Span Labs. He'll use them. I'd sling you a few pounds. Thank you, Cornish Crusade. If I enabled super chats, yeah, someday maybe I need to. I don't know. Maybe what I need to do is like assign a number. Look, when I get to 5,000, just everybody, and let's do that at 5,000 subs. That's when I'll go ahead and turn on the cash for those of you that want to sling a couple of bucks. The Punisher flick from 2004 is my favorite comic book movie, though I really liked the 2019 Shazam film. The Punisher flick, was that the first Punisher flick or the second Punisher flick? Because I liked them both. They were 2 very different takes on the Punisher. Thomas Jane is the one you're talking about, right? I really enjoyed that one. I liked the second one as well. It was a little more brutal and a little more... But they haven't really done the Punisher movie I want to see. For those of you that don't know, the Punisher... was the Marvel writers sat down and they said, we really want to put, there was a huge hit book series. Was it the Equalizer, I want to say? Again, I'm calling on the collective knowledge of the chat. I want to say it was the Equalizer. They're like 40 to 50 books, and it was a Vietnam vet that basically just was a door kicker that just tore up organized crime and biker gangs, and it was literally just him running around beating up bad guys. And it was great, like men's adventure fiction. Might Remo Williams is ringing a bell, but the Marvel writers said, "Hey, what if we dropped this character into the Marvel universe?" And so you've got this like grizzled, hardcore Vietnam vet shooting up a bunch of Silver Age superheroes, maybe Bronze Age by that point. We haven't seen that movie yet, have we? Like, the closest we've come is kind of is maybe the Daredevil. I do like the Daredevil version of the Punisher. I'd like to see him, shooting up a bunch of Avenger scale villains. That would be interesting. See, I told you I can talk about this stuff. I'm just not really going to throw it on the table. Marvel and Disney have a large enough marketing budget. They don't need my time. We have better secret handshakes. You're darn right we do. We have like expectations, guys. You got to do stuff if you want to be accepted into our. You can't just show up and expect to be treated as special. You don't get given trophy. You earn them. Your He-Man paint has his hair black, and there's no dishonor. Take your He-Man paint, his hair black. I see what you did there. I know what you're talking about. That's the way to do it. A Billion Suns is very, very good. And I like the fact, it's a solo war game. It's going to work out well for us. And here, just spoiler alert. I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute. You just showed us 3 different books. Where's my, there we go. You're telling me you don't have room for Mech Warrior, but you got room for A Billion Suns and Castles in the Sky. That's 2 whole new collections. Oh, is it? Oh, okay. My bird's biting my feet. Is it 2 collections? Or is there no reason you couldn't put together a collection of ships for this and use the same drop cloth and play this? These are the ideas. Get them while they're free, because when we hit 5,000 subs, I'm going to start charging you bastards. In all seriousness, that is exactly what I'm going to do. I only need 1 set of spaceships. And whether they're Victorian era spaceships or like Xenos Rampant era spaceships, although Xenos Rampant doesn't have an era, we know that. I may actually, that's a great idea. I could use my 2mm modern figures to play a Xenos Rampant game. Boy, that'd be nutty. Nobody's doing that, I guarantee you. Intanius Vertum, the 2004 was the first with Thomas Jane. Yeah, Thomas Jane's a good actor. I like him. Have you looked at Osprey's Kobold and Cobblestones? I have looked at it. It's Sapper Joe. It's all cards. It's dialed way into their write-up, and I don't know. Everything I've seen, it leaves me flat. I'm sure it looks like a lot of fun. It'd probably be good for the channel, but again, it looks like the big thing is it looked like one of those games where there's hidden information and bidding stuff that you have to do that's really hard to do as a solo war gamer. So that's the other reason I haven't really given it a look yet. Only if we can get Liam Neeson to play the role. Sapper Joe, that game rocks. I have no kobolds though. And hey, I'm a big fan of any game where you can go after the knife ears. Classy irregular minis airships, just paint them right. And night and day, or red blue. There's a part of me that sometimes wishes I would have just said, you know what, all my armies are red and blue. I'm thinking about redoing my 2mm black powder armies, just starting over, or at least salvaging what I can. But just look, here's the red army, here's the blue army. We're done, and you can use them for anything. And today, the red army is going to be these guys, the blue army is going to be these guys, and you can do so many different eras with them because 2mm is great. We're going to wrap up here. We are at an hour, and I got family coming in tonight. For those of you that don't know, America got pounded by a snow bomb, which is just, a winter storm. But we have to name them all now because that's what sells newspapers. It did shut down travel in the United States. So family that was supposed to be here for Christmas Day are going to become on Boxing Day, and we're going to have a Boxing Day Christmas celebration. So I got to go start getting ready for that. But we got just a couple more minutes. Different Equalizer from the 80s Denzel, Queen Latifah shows. The Equalizer was an 80s show with a 6'6" British guy. And that Equalizer was inspired by the novels. Mac Bolan. I think it was Mac Bolan is the guy. And there's 80 Mac Bolan books where it's just every time we go in and we beat up some criminals and whatnot. Take care all. Have a blessed New Year, James L. Thank you for that. So it wasn't the Equalizer, but the Equalizer started off in the same kind of Mac Bolan style where he was a New York private eye kind of guy. Some good reads in there. Those 1960s and 70s men's adventure books. I'd like to write that way. But as I said, I got to get going. Biscotti's chewing on the cables. It's good talking to you guys. Let's do another one of these next month, huh? What do you say? Sound good? I'm praying for you. Where's my end stream button? I'm so good at this.